Hi, it's Emily with Emily Talks. Welcome back to my channel. I am so grateful every time that you return because it means we get another opportunity to connect. And, sitting down in my chair, my squeaky chair, it didn't even squeak all that loud, man. It squeaks at all the other times, but not now. Sitting down in this squeaky chair, looking at my setup for success and the setup for success that's on that side, and just feeling myself and thinking deeply about my life and what's important to me and what do I want to work on today. How do I want to connect with y'all today? There's a huge reward to sitting down for myself and being intentional, and intentionally communicating with you about how my life has changed over time and the change that I still want to see and the ideas that I am currently working on and integrating. This is a super cool experience for me. And I think that that's just how I'm going to start off my channel is, each video is just thanking you and being grateful for this opportunity to connect. I've been thinking a few times about, do I want to do like an intro with a song and whatnot? Probably Polyphia, because I love, or Polyphia, however you want to say it, I don't care. Because I love their music, and then creating an outro that links to other videos and all kinds of stuff. I've been thinking about it. And, trying to be intentional about my opening for you. Absolutely. I just want to take a moment to express my gratitude for you, for myself, gratitude to me for being the person who chooses to come here and to do the work and to connect with others and to share that love and to be the change that I want to see. So yesterday I did 2 videos, one of which was on, oh my goodness, my mind just went blank. Congratulations. It was on the, mysticism is BADONG, right? Why is mysticism bad? And I feel like there was another one that I did yesterday, but y'all, I can't think. I'll link it down in the description. Whatever it is, the videos that I'm thinking of, they'll be down in the descriptions. For some reason, my mind just isn't doing it today. And you know what? Our days are sometimes like that. And I want to show that, like, if you have moments like that, it is so normal. Even when I'm trying to be all put together and create a message for you, I'm imperfect, and that's okay. Nobody's going to be upset about that. And if they are they upset with themselves when they have moments like this? Is it okay to be upset about those things? Not for my message. So the videos where I was talking about, what is mysticism, what is spirituality, and then why is mysticism badong? Why is it so bad and so wrong? And how does it hurt my ability to live? I want to now go into what is philosophy and why do I think that it's so necessary? And I kind of want to go to a little bit before even asking that question, because I arrived at that question after a while, particularly because there's a book within Objectivism by Ayn Rand called Philosophy Who Needs It. And guess who did not read that book? I will tell you that a lot of the things that I talk about are influenced by people who read these great, wonderful novels, and I communed with them, and I listened with them, and I spoke with them, and then I integrated those ideas into my life. And then I think about them deeply and I integrate them with my own understandings. I read a bunch of Aristotle and I've arrived at my conclusions, and perhaps there's something even greater for me to get from reading more of objectivist literature. But I find that it's very dense. It's hard to get through. And I am a smart cookie, all right, y'all. But taking the time to sit aside and read these books is a freaking slog. And not only is it a slog, but I often, I experience so much cognitive dissonance during reading them, because I feel like Ayn Rand would have hated me, deeply hated me, that she would have said that I am the problem that she's trying to solve in this world. And as I read, her decrees of judgment, and I'm not saying that her judgment was wrong by any means. I can't connect with it. I will read it and I just feel horrible about myself the entire time. And I don't like that experience. I do like how the ideas change my life, but I need them from, I connect with them better from a place of understanding the idea without hearing the judgment, so that I can integrate it into my life from a place of love and growth and hope, versus a place of, feeling that I'm this disgusting failure. So when it comes down to philosophy, who needs it? That was a question that I ended up formulating after I left, the experience that I grew up with was, my little brother gave the word for it, that we were raised in a cult. And I feel like that is the best descriptor, because we were incredibly isolated. We became homeschooled. The way that we were allowed to speak was changed and controlled. The things that we were allowed to eat was heavily controlled. There was a lot of, that love bombing versus, that extreme control, and then the guilt of leaving. Like, I remember I struggled for years after I left the religion that I was raised in, where every Wednesday and Friday, even after I said I'm not going to be part of this religion, it took me years to stop feeling guilty about eating meat and dairy on Wednesdays and Fridays, which are fast days. No meat, dairy, fish, wine, or oil. We did the more hardcore version. And in the other video, when I was talking about, I think it was the one on mysticism versus spirituality, where I talked about, again, my little brother came up with this idea of, if Christianity or if religions held, it became an Olympic sport, the way that you would play that sport is through orthodoxy, because it is so rigorous. It is very controlling in every aspect of your life. You could find a rule and a way to surrender yourself to this exercise in every moment of your life, a prayer. It's it's this rigorous philosophy that requires the surrendering of the mind, and requires rejecting reality in order to accept this very, very deep message. And because I was homeschooled in this and I had very, very intelligent parents, we ended up reading all of these philosophical texts that were deep, and they were St. John of the Ladder of Divine Ascent, is an example, the Prologue of Oakrid, the Law of God, Orthodox dogmatic theology. There was one other one, The Arena, which was kind of a book about modern asceticism, how to approach asceticism. And these works are incredibly scary, because a lot of it talks about, demonic warfare and surrendering the body, because the body is fallen, to be able to communicate with God and to commune with God, and that the mind is driven to do what is evil, and that is why we deprive ourselves of earthly interest, to be able to better commune with God. And the way that my parents portrayed it, I think there was a lot of it in there that didn't necessarily jive with Orthodox teachings, or especially how most Orthodox people behave. If you think about radical Islam and the people who are out there murdering others and stoning family members to death and all of that kind of stuff, that's not how typical people want to live. Most humans want to have a good life, and they want to love themselves and love others, and they're going to temper their religious understanding and their spiritual understanding with the facts of reality, because if you really lived that way, like, if you starved yourself to be able to get closer to God, you die. And that kind of goes against our basic wiring. So I was just part of this really overwhelming religion, and I had become deeply depressed, and I was I would stop eating for days on end, and just keep trying not to wake up. Every time I would wake up, I would go back to sleep. I'd wake up, I'd be incredibly hungry, and I would go back to sleep and just hope I didn't wake up again, because that's where I was at. I was just so empty of myself, and doing really hurtful and destructive things because I could never be good enough for God, because I was hungry and stuff, like basic things. I was also acting out and behaving poorly, but the acting out came after a long childhood of trying to be good enough and really not rebelling, trying constantly to be good enough. And there was a point at which I remember actually the day that my spirit broke, where I was home from college and I was out past dark without talking to my parents beforehand. I came home maybe around 9 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock. And I was home for spring break, and they told me, we can't trust you because you didn't tell us the truth about being out. And I'd already been living away in college where I would be wherever I wanted to be. And they said to me that I was going to be grounded for the entirety of spring break, where I had to stay home. And that was the moment that my spirit broke, that I realized that, when I was maybe 14, someone, I talked about how much control I experienced at home. And they were like, oh, there's always a window that you can go out of. And to me, that was so bizarre. I was like, why would I sneak out of a window? I just was so scared of the idea of defying my parents. And not just defying my parents, I wasn't scared of that. I was scared of being a bad kid. I was scared of being morally bad. I didn't want to do that. And that was kind of, that night where I came home and I had these severe repercussions for my actions while I was in college. I was a whole adult at this point. I realized in that moment that I had no efficacy, that at that point there was no option for me to make my own decisions about my life, and that I gave up. And from then on out, I kind of just wandered around like this empty husk. And I did a lot of things to try to make myself feel better, that were bad actions. They were hurtful to myself, but it wasn't out of a sense of rebellion or trying to hurt anyone or trying to be my own person. It's because I was wandering around aimlessly and just wanting to feel okay for a few minutes or a few hours or just a day of feeling okay. And of course I didn't. I was deeply suffering. And then I got pregnant with my son. And I had said multiple times, to myself out loud, I said, or to others, either I'm going to get a disease or get pregnant. And I would laugh kind of just emptily about that. And I was so sure that God was going to give me a disease and I was going to die from my behavior. And I was okay with that. I just wanted something to change. I wanted something to be different. And I felt that the only difference that could possibly come about from the way that I was living is that I was killing myself, which was absolutely true. There's something inside of me that saw that this is death. And somehow God bestowed upon me life. The life of my child. And, this is the way that I viewed it at that time, because I was still deeply Christian. I still deeply believed in God. And there's, the reason why I am embracing spirituality again, and that particular word is because these deep experiences of, experiencing something that is truly worth following, it happens to me in a place of pre-rationality. And then I check that against the facts of reality. I check that with my cognitions to figure out what is right and wrong about it, but I never want to just outright reject it. I want to take those extreme experiences that I have that pull me toward the facts of, or pull me toward reality and toward what is good. And I listen to that and I respect it and I refuse to reject it on the grounds that it's not yet rational, that I've not yet integrated fully consciously with understanding the world and the concepts that go behind it. I want to continue to listen to that because it is the root of what drives me to be a good and wonderful and beautiful person, full of love, self-love, full of this shining light that comes out from inside of me. If that's why I call myself objective-ish, is because I want to continue putting that as my first driving force, but always checking myself to see, does this fit? How is this the thing that fits? But it always comes from an experience outside of me that I deeply respond to, and that's what guides me. But it's not always quite in my critical thinking yet. I haven't conceptualized and integrated it. I've just had this experience that draws me. And, the experience of having a baby in my belly, I talked about, I would not eat for a long time and I would keep going to sleep and hoping that eventually I would stop waking up. I started eating because I wanted to feed my baby. I started eating with a purpose and I ate good foods, and I looked up what were the foods that would help my baby grow, and I became a vessel. I still felt disgusting, like I was this disgusting thing that somehow God had chosen to implant in me something beautiful. I kind of in a way felt like, Mary, this fallen human who's carrying God, this infinitely precious thing, that how could I ever contain something so wonderful and magnificent within the brokenness of who I was. It felt impossible for me to contain something so beautiful and so precious. And I took that very, very seriously. And, when I finally got away from what was happening, and I've said this multiple times, but, there was a point at which I was holding my son. He was maybe, a few months old. I was holding him. He was maybe close to being able to walk. And I looked down at him and I just wept because I could never imagine doing to him what was happening to me at that current time. Not even in the past, but the way that I was being spoken to. It made a lot of sense in a way because my parents did not, they very, very carefully explained why I was not eligible for respect, why I was not eligible for privacy, like why those particular things could not apply to me as a child. And when I was an adult at that time, I was 22. After I had my son, I probably had already turned 23, and I'm sitting on the couch in their living room, and I couldn't imagine telling those same things to my son. And many worse things had happened to me in my life. I was no longer being physically or sexually hurt in any way at that time, besides, sexually what I was doing to myself. But that was me hurting myself, me abusing myself through sex. It was not the people who decided to sleep with me. You know, and I just feel really deeply for them that I used them in that way. There were a few people that went above and beyond and did some things that to me that were bad, but it definitely, most of it was people who had no idea how much I was hurting and hurting myself, and they just liked sex, you know, and I did not have the discernment to recognize who was egging them, you know, begging them for that. And, you know, all of this just deep, radical experience that I had, this urge to do what was right, I saw all of that as I held my son. And, you know, other things, you know, came to pass where I was able to go on, get out of that situation and launch myself into another codependent relationship that, you know, the other person had no idea that that's what was going on there, because I had very little capacity for honesty, because I just didn't even know myself or know reality. The ability to communicate with reality had been systematically destroyed in my mind and in my heart. So, you know, in so much as I have basic human function to still keep feeding myself and, you know, try to go to work and be a responsible person, it was really coming from, you know, basic human survival and then a sense of duty. And I had to completely recalibrate myself. So at the time, it wasn't philosophy who needs it in my mind, or, you know, I'm going to title this video here, you know, the necessity of your philosophy or something along those lines. I haven't picked it out yet. I usually spend a little bit of time getting together what my video is going to be called, because I care about words and I like messages to be nice and tight and neat and essential with the words that I use. So it'll get there. But, you know, the way that Ayn Rand says it, which is philosophy who needs it, and unfortunately I haven't read her book, so I can't really title it that. I'm not going to be sharing any quotes from her, although I looked through quotes from the book. I was trying to pull something out that would really talk about the essence of what I'm talking about here, but I couldn't find anything particularly neat and tidy, and I was like, you know what? This is coming from my experience anyway, and influenced by people who talked about her ideas with me. And I know that I could still share this experience with you without having to read her books. And I already talked a little bit about the concerns I have with trying to learn directly through things that Ayn Rand or Leonard Peikoff or any other great objectivist writers, the problems that I have approaching that. So the ideas are still worth sharing, and here I am sharing them with you. So this necessity of philosophy is that I knew that I needed to make good choices. I didn't want to have my choices go to the wind, but I knew that I needed to experience more reality from my own self to know what the right direction was. And that really kind of sums up what philosophy is. Philosophy, you know, and these are my words, I may mangle this, but this is kind of what I've gleaned over time, and it's heavily influenced by objectivism by Ayn Rand. Unfortunately, I don't have a quote from her because it's just things that I've heard over time that I have integrated into this idea. But, you know, philosophy is the collection of concepts that helps me make choices in this world. And morality describes whether those choices are good or bad. So, you know, I didn't yet think in clear enough, more radical enough ways to be able to identify that this is what I was doing. But I knew that I needed a blank slate. I needed to kind of observe things without judgment. And, you know, as I've come through, I just had a video a little bit ago about judgment versus discernment, because as I learned things, they become more clear over time. So I was doing this, but I was doing it from a very lost, hurt, broken place that I just knew I needed change. And that those first moments with my son, I was incredibly gentle with him, and I was very um, just trying to learn and letting my experience with him guide me, because I saw his human potential of greatness, and that was so infinitely precious to me that I let that guide me at first. But parenting is complex, man. And even if you know all of the things that you should know, or encapsulate, hey, this is the right knowledge, the specifics of parenting are complex and they're tough, and there's just a lot of ways to get things right and wrong. And even with different children, like I only have one, but I understand from many sources that no two children are the same, and that makes sense because identity is specific to the individual. So I needed to recalibrate, and unfortunately, in my desire to provide and to become a provider, I became incredibly hardened, because nobody was feeling sorry for me. And that was kind of the place where I came from. Is, I was being hurt a lot. And one of the maladaptive coping mechanisms that worked for me was making people feel sorry for me, that I was being so hurt, so I would get help. And I mean, that's a legitimate thing, right? Helping people who are hurting is a legitimate thing. I just integrated it into something that was very unhealthy and codependent because of the experiences that I had. And that was my tool of survival in this really unusual, not unusual, I don't want to say it, but that, because it's not unusual, but it was in an environment that does not support human thriving, right? Which is kind of unfortunate to say, that it's not unusual to encounter situations that don't support human thriving. It's kind of sad. So, I started working, and I realized that nobody was going to come and pick me up every time that I had a boo-boo. And I had a lot of them because, I was very, very broken, and I was trying to figure out how to survive. And I'd left my parents, and I knew that if I failed, that the place that I crawled back to, was my mom. And I knew that that would just prove everything that she had said about me not being capable or able, that I would go back through that same experience that I went through in that spring break from college, where it was just like, yeah, you aren't capable, and we're going to take that away from you. And I knew that if I crawled back to home, there would be no way in my own mind even to salvage that I was strong enough to take care of my son. And it led to treating him really, really poorly, and not giving him any of my spoons, not giving him any of my time or attention, because I was exhausted. I was emotionally and mentally exhausted all of the time, and physically exhausted. I worked full-time. I went to school 3/4 time. So I had a lot on my plate, and I did not make time for my son. And I just remember a lot of times where he would come to me and want to play with me, being 3-4 years old, being hungry, and just me getting so insanely upset at him and screaming at him at the top of my lungs. And what a horrible thing to do to this precious child. I didn't recognize that spanking was bad until my son was maybe 5, 6. So I spanked him too, and what a horrible, traumatic experience. And my son, now, even though I stopped spanking him years ago, he's now lived, he's lived about, half as long of his life with me not spanking as having spanked. So he has quite a bit of years of not happening, but the neglect didn't stop. The upset at him needing my attention and time and my love did not stop, because I was exhausted and I was putting all of my energy in trying to be a good business person, be a good employee, and grow to make more money. I'm smart. I've got good ideas, and I felt that, you know, this was the thing that I needed to pursue, because I was going to be a powerful woman within in work. And there is a way to do that with healthy balance, but the way that I was doing it certainly wasn't. And, you know, amidst all of this, I still recognized that knowing what's right and wrong is concrete. That's something that I just knew. And I didn't know why, but I knew that, you know, there was a good way and a bad way to do stuff, because I knew that when I did something bad, I felt bad. And I felt bad in this really radical, essential type of way that I didn't really need to think about it or understand why it was bad. I experienced it and I was like, this is not good, man. And that comes down to, you know, the fact that, you know, mortality, the knowledge that I'm going to die someday, is the thing that drives me to make an impact now, and to and the first most important impact, of course, is that I take care of my life, right? That I feed myself, that I protect myself from the elements, that I find good trade partners, you know, relationships, that I'm a social creature, that, you know, I specialize in what I do so I can be around other people who specialize in what they do. And we can all maximize our thriving. All of these different things are essential parts of the human experience. Whether or not we talk about them and we name them, they're important because they are the survival thing. And, you know, if you think about the different tools of survival that different animals have, the humans' tool of survival is our intelligence. It's our ability to look around the world and think about it and manipulate it and create. You know, we aren't born with claws, but we create tools that are claw-like for us, you know. We aren't able to run fast, doesn't matter. We use contraptions that make that middle ground for us so that we can hunt, so that we can provide for ourselves. And, you know, it goes to such a fantastic, wondrous extreme that now, you know, we went from being able to catch prey without being able to run to flying in the air in airplanes, flying into space, exploring other planets, thinking about our future in space. Like, we start with these basic level cognitions and we go to the stars with it. It's so powerful. And that wasn't born from our minds just thinking about things willy-nilly and then we happened on this. No, we think in principles. And the principles first, starting with life. And then, you know, once I started understanding that philosophy was the way that I think about approaching the world and how I make decisions, even down to, am I eating eggs for breakfast today? That's already a philosophical question, because I'm caring for my basic bodily needs. And then as I go into, you know, which foods do I want to cook, comes down to, you know, which macro elements do I want to fulfill? And then, you know, how do I want my eggs cooked, scrambled, or poached? That comes down to my own joy of experiencing life and the things that to me are just delightful. So even art has its place, and our own taste, because it reflects our joy for life. It's all part of philosophy. And it's necessary, whether or not you want to say it. Like, okay, don't call it philosophy, but you choose every day. Make choices every day that impact your ability to live. I think one of the hardest things the hardest thing for me, and I cried and I was angry and I yelled, was that I live for my own self first. Because that to me is just so at odds. That's selfish. How would I live for me first? I live for my son first. I sacrifice myself for my son. I sacrifice myself. I feel myself, losing sleep, and I do all of these things. So Mark was probably 4 at the time that, I first started learning about objectivism and about egoism and living for myself first, and selfishness is a virtue. And I did not like that. I deeply embraced altruism at its core, but that's at odds with first taking care of myself. If you think about the thing of, giving clothing off of my back, if I give clothing off of my back and then I am exposed to the elements and I die because I haven't cared for myself first, I can no longer give. If we all did that, we would all die because we're always looking out for someone else or waiting for somebody else to come look after us. And that kind of leaves you in this place of not exploring, not having time for luxury to do what you want to do, and first thriving for yourself so then you can share with others. It starts from a place of need instead of a place of bounty. And that's really essential, man. Start with bounty. Think of bounty first and then share. Think of bounty first. So, I needed to change that particular thing of thinking that I must sacrifice myself to things that I think are really, really great. And instead think in terms of, I want my life to be great. And that is super duper impactful. Once I started thinking about, I love my son so deeply because I care about my life, because I selfishly care so much about my life, that love that I feel for myself spills out of me and envelopes my son, spills out of me and envelopes my little brother, spills out of me and touches you because I care about you. I care about you because you represent myself. I'm writing love letters to you because I want my life to be better. And it starts with me. Have your love. I don't want you to come over here and give me love. I want you to love yourself so much that you come here to do that more, to share in that, to radiate that. Love yourself, man. It's so powerful. Think about it deeply, care about it. Do it principled, have those principles to guide you, with first saying, I love my life so much that I want to share what is good through bringing in another life into this world, and cherishing that life and treating that life so that it has the possibility that new person that I bring into this world has the possibility of love and wonder and joy and thriving just like me. How powerful of a thing is that? That's like this expression of creation where there's a whole nother individual there with their own potential. It's like, exponentially changing the world by making another me, but that person is all their own. And that comes from a place of selfishness. So I care about me. So yeah, we all need philosophy. Whether or not we want to call it philosophy, the thing behind it, that principled thinking, or however you choose to think, if you don't put your life first and put making decisions that support your life, if you're putting something else at that basic center, you're going to get a different result than your own life. And for those of you who are into mysticism and think that, you know, life beyond this, life with God is really important. You know, take this idea with you that the think deeply about what is the principle that drives you and apply that in your life, and you will live more according to your principle in every little thing that you do. And, you know, what I found over time is that the principles of mysticism, of relying on something higher than myself, had me rejecting important things about reality that I didn't want to reject. So, you know, I came to atheism and even to a point that I would call anti-theism, because I'm anti-mysticism. But, you know, absolutely, I'm still into that spirituality, that sense of, you know, the reason why I seek what is good is because I first had some experience that drove me into that direction. And I worked my mind and I worked my intentions on figuring out what that was. And I'm never going to stop listening to that inside of me, because it has every time pointed me towards life and thriving, and I only find out more. You're going to check out, you're going to see in the description, which I hope that you check out, I'm going to have my thing on morality. Why is it BADONG? Or, you know, morality is BADONG. Oops, morality? Oh my goodness. Mysticism. Mysticism is BADONG. You're going to see my one on morality and spirituality. I actually talked in one of my videos while I said and versus versus. versus. Just a few other bits of my content. There's some magical video that I can't remember what the name is, and it probably isn't even another video. It's probably just, you know, mysticism is BADONG, but I could be wrong. I feel like there's a third video that I can't think of. So check out the description. I'm also going to link Philosophy Who Needs It. There's a book by Craig Biddle, but I often find, you know, I've tried reading these books, Opar, The Objectivist Philosophy of Ayn Rand. I'm going to link all that stuff down in the description, because if that's interesting to you, you could read it. But I myself personally found them a slog. They were really hard to read, and they filled me with a sense of dread and self-hatred. Even though the principles are so good, they are what is changing my life. I just found that the context that it was coming from was really hard to do, and that's why I'm here making these videos, is because I have been exposed to these ideas and I've integrated them into my life, and it has changed my life, and I want to share that with y'all. So I feel really crappy about the fact that I have not read the works that are influencing me, because they're so tough for me to get through, and they're also really dense. The philosophy there is incredibly academic in nature, and I want to reach way more people and not have this, you know, gatekeeping of, if you aren't incredibly intellectual and understand a ton of terms in philosophy, you can't come. I really think that that's a load of bollocks, and that people who everybody needs deeply to understand that their experience is important, that your experience is the only experience that's going to get you through your life. And you have to take that seriously. And I'm here to share that with you. And I don't care what terms you do or do not know, because you still need to do well in your life. And I'm here for that. I feel like even my videos are a little too dense at times, where I use big words and I go down these, you know, philosophical comparisons that are, you know, miles deep of understanding that I have from other, you know, dense crap that I've read. And I don't want to get lost in that. So absolutely, I'm going to link all this stuff in the description. But if it's tough for you to read, don't dismiss it outright, and keep coming back, because I'm going to keep trying to connect and share in a way that you can love yourself and come here and commune with that. Namaste, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me today.